As the podcast coach for March 17th, 2018. And you know what's funny, Jim? I can't hear the music now. We'll put that in post. Why can't I hear the music? Hold on. There we go. All right. Oh, I love live. What the problem was, I had it paused, and I'm like, wait, so I'm hitting the right button. No. Ask the podcast coach for March 17th, St. Patty's Day, 2018. There it is, that fun-filled music that you can't hear on YouTube. Welcome to Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast. Hey, you know what, Jim? You're going to love this. Guess what?
You didn't hit record, did you?
Excellent.
All right, one more time.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Dave, you have to do the intro first. Can you tell Dave got about 5 hours?
I know. You didn't get much sleep last night.
No, not at all. Ask the podcast coach for March 17th, 2018. There it is, that fun-filled music that means it's Saturday. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. Joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from the averageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings. Happy Saturday morning to you, Dave, and happy St. Patrick's Day. I think you said that in one of the intros that we did this morning to get fired up in here. Always good to be back on Ask the Podcast Coach. It does, we've talked about whether you play the music live or you do it in post-production. And I'm so used to that music, it kind of sets the tone for the show.
Yeah.
And when we don't play it, you kind of miss it. So I don't know. I guess I have to go back and forth on that one.
It's weird. I've come to the conclusion, although it's not based on a ton of data, I've used this mixer with Squadcast. I've used it with Zoom. I've used it with a couple things for lengthy periods of time. And I was on the Podcasters Roundtable Thursday, and lo and behold, mid roundtable, we lose my audio. I think it's a Google Hangout thing. So in the event I just start talking and you can't hear me, let me know. And here's the really weird thing. All I have to do is click the gear. I don't even have to change my settings. Just clicking the gear somehow brought me back. And I was like, well, that's kind of odd. But if you're listening live, we're also on Mixlr. For those of you that can't, you're out and about or you're mowing the lawn, if you're somewhere warm or something like that, we're going to make it out of the 30s today. That's exciting. And you can come over to askthepodcastcoach.com/live. If you want to join us, it's askthepodcastcoach.com/join. And you can pop right in here and ask whatever questions you have. But we were talking, I think, before we hit record, one of the times. It is Saturday. It's St. Patty's Day, and it's March Madness.
Oh, it's going to be ugly in Omaha. We take all those things super seriously here. So it's going to be, I just can't, just stay indoors tonight. It's going to be bad. Yeah.
And whatever shoes you wear, make it something that you don't mind if it gets puked on, I would think.
If you are going out, and maybe this is, and I'm sure this is uniquely a United States thing. So here in America as well. But yeah, I can't imagine for it to land on a Saturday and for those two things, it's going to be messy. But the good news is Saturday morning, it's not that way here. Did you fill out brackets, Dave? Are you a bracket guy for
here's the thing. I am almost, I don't hate sports. I admire the talent. I know the Browns made a ton of changes and we drafted a guy from, I have no clue what's going on. I just kind of quit watching. I know the Cavs are not very good this year. The Indians again are all banged up. I couldn't tell you what's going on in sports. So I just kind of quit watching sports, and then there are other things that I do. So it's not like I'll watch football in the playoffs. I'll watch basketball in the playoffs. I'll watch I join in the playoffs when it counts. But other than that, I've never been a college, any kind of college sports, now I think about it. I don't know why that is. I think because it's on Saturday, I'm usually doing something on Saturday.
Well, for those podcasters who are sports podcasters, and I don't know how many sports podcasters we have that listen to us. I don't think we necessarily attract that audience, but this is their Super Bowl, right? When they're podcasting about it'd be college hoops right now, or the Super Bowl, or think about what Corey went through with Ivy Envy when the Cubs were going to the World Series. What a run that is. But if you, and we think of Nick, we had Nick on last week, right? He does that FC Cincinnati soccer talk. those in those sports worlds, they really do have this very speculative moment when their team goes all the way, and they have incredible opportunities for momentum and for listeners and for, to increase listeners and those kinds of things. And I think, Dave, that's one of those spaces where if you're podcasting in that area, man, you better be ready for that moment. You can't make it happen. You can't force it to happen. You can't wish, I mean, you can wish it happens, but you should think through what happens. I mean, I think every podcaster should probably ask themselves this question. What happens if all of a sudden I wake up tomorrow and I have 1 million downloads? Like, what would I do? What would I do differently? How would I monetize different? How would I think about the show differently? What would I do with my community? Because I think, most of the podcasters, we sit in that 100,000, 10,000. That's probably those three areas that probably covers 99% of everybody who listens to this show. But think about that next level. Like, okay, so I'm 1,000 today. What would I do differently if my numbers jumped to 10,000? And I think that's a good exercise to think through. And I think it's not just like daydreaming about it. I think actually sit down and say, I would be ready to do X, whatever that X is, right? And have that plan ready to go. I don't think enough podcasters plan for success and then they get there and they're like, don't you think? I hit the gear button there because you did. I think we just lost your. That's weird.
It's very weird.
Yeah, you're back. You're back now. Yeah, you're back.
I didn't hit. All I hit is the gear.
No, that's okay. We got you back. So don't you think, like in that planning, I really think you need to think through that future state and say, what would I do if I hit X number?
Yeah, because to me, it's there are a couple different things. If I know what I would do differently if I had more money. Like I would start shipping this stuff off to, all sorts of different editors. This show especially, I would just hand it to somebody, go here, this. And anytime there's, get rid of the 14 intros that Dave did when he couldn't remember hit the right button. Get rid of those kind of things. That would be something I would do differently. I was thinking about that. I know I did an episode once that was called, "Are you really doing everything you could to promote your podcast?" And it's just one of those things. It's like you said, what happens if tomorrow you woke up and somebody said, like if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, we want to turn your podcast into a TV show," and you go, "Great," and they go, "How many downloads do you have?" And you go, "I'm getting a couple thousand an episode." And they're like, "Oh," and you're like, "What?" And they're like, "If you were up to 5,000 downloads, we'd turn you into a TV show." Like, what would go through your head? You're like, "Oh, I should have done," you know what I mean? One of those things. And it's
it's a good way of thinking about it too, which is, okay, if I had, you'd be more motivated if something like that happened to be able to do those. But you bring an interesting point too. What if I spent another $1,000 on my podcast? What if I had $1,000 available for marketing? What would I do?
That's the question. I see that a lot now where people are going, especially with tax season coming up, and all of a sudden I've got $700. What should I do with it? And a lot of people throw it at equipment, and I'm like, unless your audio is really horrible, what would you do if you had $1,000?
Oh man, see, that's a great question. I don't know if I've thought that through myself.
I'd probably use it on
advertising would be the natural. I think you
I
always
would
get
find
that
a conference to go to.
Oh yeah,
maybe.
See, this is you should know that. Like, what's the next step for your podcast? If you had an extra X number of dollars or X number of listeners, what would you do? And I think it's really, really important to step through that success process and just kind of say, okay, at this success level, I'm thinking through. I've been spending a lot of time, crypto is real popular right now and cryptocurrency, and I've been listening to a bunch of YouTubers on it. And I've got this one guy, Carter Thomas, who's super reasonable. And he kind of talks about this philosophy with investing and with cryptocurrency, and that you have to kind of imagine yourself at the next level and then plan, because if you hit it, it's an opportunity to go even farther. But if you haven't thought about it, you'll stall at that spot, and and maybe not even handle it very well or handle it right. Look at all the famous Hollywood folks who've hit fame and then flame out because they haven't thought ready. Through, right?
Yeah. A lot of there was a documentary on ESPN called Broke, and they explained how all these athletes from the days of Pee Wee football are having things handed to them, and then their career's over in 4 years because of a bad knee, whatever, and they go broke because nobody has taught them how to handle their money, and they're just used to everything given to them. It's really weird. Some people in the chat room here, Zach says, I would get a media hosting and a mixer. Zach, you don't have a media host. Do you know you can get a free month at Libsyn by using the coupon code SOP free or Blueberry or Spreaker? Covert
new computer. Yeah.
New computer. Kim says she'd go to a conference. That's one of those things where it's like, because I know a lot of people spend money on Facebook ads, and from what I understand, Facebook wants you to send people back to Facebook, like so you can like my page or something. Like that's not going to help me. 5,000 likes is not going to get me more downloads. It's going to get me.
If you engaged people, if you brought them back to a group or a page and you were able to engage them on that page and get them to your site, that's another step in the process. Advertising is always that magical, mystical black hole. Like, you should spend money on advertising, but you don't know how. And we have spent at Gallup, we spent a bunch recently, and I've been talking to that team there, and it is always, it's not a for sure thing, it's not but if you could get, $10 of value for every dollar you invested, would you do it?
Who wouldn't?
But yeah, so if that money's
it's a matter of finding where can I get
you got to find that spot.
Yeah.
And it takes a little research, and it takes a little time, and it takes a little testing, and we spent a bunch of time testing that. But just to have that plan kind of in place of here's what I'm going to do. You asked me that question. I'm a hobby guy, and I don't, the big plans for my podcast are just to be able to get it recorded. And like, I have a file sitting ready to edit this weekend that I've got to do at some point in time. So for me, I'm not always thinking forward, but I think for some who are thinking like, we want to make something out of this, I think if you haven't sat down and said, at this number of listeners, I'm going to do this, or at this dollar amount, I'm going to do that, I think that'd be really important to do that planning. Yeah,
it's I think he's kidding. Rich in the chat room says counseling.
Well, I think some of us need counseling. I'll be honest with you. It's never a bad thing. Oh, consulting.
Consulting. Oh, that would make sense. There you go.
Yeah, consulting.
It's an interesting question though, because it is a matter of like, we all want to grow our audience, but and I think that's kind of one of the problems is we're all looking for that, not 10,000 download, but something that's going to like measurably, I can look and see where, again, not hockey stick growth, but something that I can see, in a couple months, things are going up where before it was going up, but it was 3%. I would like it to go up 5%. Something that would be noticeable, at least. We'd all love to have 6% growth, but I mean, the new Infinite Dial came out, and the good news is all the numbers are growing up, unless you're Facebook. That I thought was interesting. But they're all, again, 3 to 5%. 19% of people listen on, faster. I forget. Rob Greenlee has a term for them. They're like fast casters or something like that. Do you listen at like?
I do. 1.5. Yeah. 1.5. What's really weird is when I'm listening. So this week I was listening to a few podcasts that I've only listened to at 1.5, and somehow my player got set back to original speed. And so the music's slower and they talk slower. And I'm like, are you drunk? Like, oh, so you got to go in there. You're so used to hearing their opening music at 1.5 speed. It sounds weird at normal speed.
Yeah. Harry Duran, his music to me is dun, 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 and the same thing. All of a sudden, this one day, I'm like, what is this? And I'm like,
it's super slow.
And then here came, hello, welcome to Podcast Junkies. And I'm like, wait, this is what? And I'm like, oh. And it's not 1.5 or 2. A lot of times it's weird. I can't listen at like 2x in the morning, but once I'm awake, I can start edging up towards 1.75 or whatever.
That's too fast for me. I can't go.
Yeah, it depends on the podcast.
The other thing Smart Speed does, though, Dave, is it cuts out the gaps, and you don't realize how many podcasters leave big audio gaps. And so when you're listening live and one, they're super efficient in the way they talk, and you think that's just the way they talk, and then you meet them and they have audio gaps, and you're like, could you talk a little faster? Or because like I'm used to listening to you a whole lot faster.
Yeah. Zach's talking about trying to find money for his podcast.
Yeah.
super easy. Quit drinking coffee, as Jim drinks his Starbucks. And
Home brewed, by the way. This is about a 25-cent thing of coffee.
yeah,
So
and yeah, there you go. There's that. And then for me, I've told the story before. I used to spend $3 a day, 20 days a month. So there's $60 a month on Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And I drink water. This stuff is free. And
this stuff is sitting on my desk from Thursday night, right?
Is that blueberry beer?
This is blueberry stout. Yeah, blueberry maple stout. Super delicious. Tastes like a waffle. But it's this, those kinds of things that you don't need, and they're delicious. All the things we talked about are super delicious, but you're right. Some of those things, Dave Ramsey talks about, this gazelle-like intensity.
Yeah.
Sell some stuff. Like, get rid of some junk if you can. Unload some things if you can.
I had a friend of mine who lives in Oklahoma. He was in town. My best friend. I've known the guy since I did the math. I've known him since 1976. Wow, that makes me sound very, very old. And so he's at my apartment. We're walking around, and he's like, we went from the living room where there's a mixer in the corner. We go into here. There's a mixer here, and we go to my bedroom, and there's 2 mixers. He's like, "How many mixers do you have?" And I'm like, "I know. I got another 2 in the closet that somebody sent me to try." And I'm like, "I need to eBay this stuff."
No, unload some crap.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it with gazelle-like intensity. Get some stuff moved. Get some stuff sold. Have a garage sale.
You know what I want to do? Because it dawned on me. It's really weird. I watch very little TV in my living room. That's where I bought this giant screen TV. I watch it on my lunch, but I rarely am relaxing, chilling out, watching TV in the living room. I'm almost always watching TV on Hulu or something like that. I do hate the fact that Spectrum, which used to be Time Warner Cable, they do not let me watch something I've DVR'd on a computer. That drives me nuts. And then it dawned on me the one day, wait a minute, I have Hulu. So I need to cut back my cable to like just the basics. In fact, I probably should like just cut it, period. And then when I just need a package that I can watch The Walking Dead. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure if I have Hulu, I can get AMC. And if that's the case, I could go down to whatever, because my cable bill, I just cut HBO and Showtime and something else, and it's still like $100. And I'm like, no. Part of that is it's the dumbest thing ever. I have $10 of that is a phone that I don't use. And it's because if I have a phone, my internet is like $20 cheaper. So I spend $10 to save 20. I hate crap like that. But that's something where in terms of finding money, and just sitting around thinking, do I watch any TV? And I'm like, no. And most of the stuff that I do watch is not like, I watch Shark Tank. I watch The Prophet. And then there's, I'll watch Jimmy Fallon. Well, I can watch that on YouTube. There's really, I'm like, there's money there, easy money to take back off the table and put back in my wallet.
So. Dustin has a question, but let me say this, and then we'll jump to Dustin's question. I also think when you're thinking about spending money on your podcast, and equipment, and hosting, and maybe even advertising, right? But in the tech space, and maybe in some other spaces, it benefits me to actually buy the equipment I'm testing. And so if I'm talking about equipment or services, you do this too. You buy podcasting services and then talk about them on your show. I really do feel like when you make that purchase, you have the ability to be fair and open and honest. And I think that's why people like listening to you, Dave, is because they're going to get the straight story from you. You're not going to be a shill for whatever you're selling. I mean, you've called out several products. You've been maybe too much so.
Yeah, almost sued in some cases.
Almost sued because of it. But I think for us podcasters that are in that space where we're doing reviews or those kinds of things or experiences, it'd be tough to have a vacation podcast and not be on a vacation, right? Go to these vacation destinations. So, and I think it's hard when you're working for, like, if you're doing a vacation podcast and someone's paying for all those, well, you start asking some questions, don't you?
I've got a great example of that.
Yeah.
If somebody said, is social media marketing world worth going to? I really can't answer that question. I can tell you what a great time I had, but I got a free ticket for speaking, and then Libsyn picked up the travel.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, so I didn't pay anything. And if I had to put out, I'd have to go. In fact, I haven't done my expense report yet, but it's easily close to $2,000 because hotels in San Diego are not cheap. The flight wasn't that expensive, but the hotel was like $200-300 a night. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And when you do that for 4 nights, all of a sudden there's $1,000 out the window. I would probably say it probably was worth it because I got a lot of really cool stuff at that conference, but it's a lot of money. It's one of those things where, and it's easy to, what I end up doing is I put it on a credit card and then Libsyn pays me back. Then I pay my credit card. But if I didn't have somebody paying me back, my credit card bill would be a lot higher now than
right.
It is.
Yeah.
So
Dustin's got this question. Maybe we should get to it.
Yeah.
He said, what suggestions do you have to start a podcast creatively? I'm working on a podcast called The Christian Dad, and I wondered what would be a creative way to start it off without it sounding cheesy or preachy? Dave?
Creatively. Can you give me an example of somebody that you think is creative? Because they're in fact, you guys can't hear my soundboard. I was going to play happy music. I've been selected to speak at Podcast Movement. Here's the cool thing. I get to speak with Jeff Brown, who is just this is another guy that's got like 20 years in radio. And we're doing a session on how to start your podcast and how people blow it. And I did it because of the whole podcast rodeo show. I just see people just blow it time and time again. I
think just don't be cheesy and preachy. Like, get something a little edgy or be contemporary with it and try a couple. Like when we did Spartan Radio, which was in the early days, remember the Spartan races where they'd go around and throw swords and swing across fire? You're familiar with that? Anyways,
no.
It was a big race movement in the running racing subculture, and they got on TV at one point. They got fairly popular, but in the early days, we created what we called Spartan Radio, and it was just a podcast for people who did these Spartan races. And we went through about 6 different intros before we found the one we really liked. And we ended up one with me saying, "You found Spartan Radio." and then it had some, kind of music behind the scenes. But we did 5 or 6 or 7 until we found the one that we liked. I think keep your intro super simple. I think most people throw way too much content in their intro and they make it way too complicated, and they have too many sound things and too many spinning globes. And, it's like, no, make it simple.
Yeah. Is that a link to that PDF? Kim is talking about a PDF that she got. Let's see, maybe not. 25 magnetic episodes. This is from David Hooper from Big Podcast. That's interesting. But here's the thing for me, your podcast somewhere should explain what the podcast is about. So this one, you get your podcast questions answered live. Now, we can't do this on this show. Now, had I known we were going to talk about what would you do with $1,000, but we kind of just go with whatever the chat room's doing, what's going on. I know I read an article this morning about iHeartRadio filing bankruptcy, but that's really, for the record, kind of boring. I don't know that it really affects me. So I was like, so a lot of times we just go with the chat room, but I think a podcast within the first minute should let you know what the podcast is about and what the episode that you're about to listen to is about. And then from there, everything else is, if you can explain why you should listen to you, if there's a way that you can kind of subtly say,
what's the payoff, right? What's the payoff for listening? Your question's answered live. That's the payoff here.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I'm not a big fan of pro voiceover work for your own show. So you get this super, like you're hearing an intro and it's voiceover guy in a world, and then it's this professional music, and then you come in, and let's just say most of us don't have voiceover, right?
Dude, last night I go to this concert and I just call it the Ozzy music. You would know it if you hear it. It's a dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. And at the end it goes dun, and then you have all these trumpets going dun, 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 dun. And then the band came on, it was like, was like, oh, that was the most anticlimactic.
I know.
Oh,
I
it was
know.
just
You
like,
don't want to build up your intro more than the energy that you have yourself. So if you're a soft-spoken person, I don't think you want to go for voiceover guy.
dun, dun, dun. Thank you very much. Welcome to the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the thing I see a lot is repeating stuff. Like I just heard one, the Randy Black show. Super. I told him, I said, go find Chris Nessie because I think he's a science teacher, 7th grade science teacher. It's for high school, junior high teachers. It was really cool. And he started off, hey, welcome to the Randy Black show where we blah, 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 and help you get more strategies to reach your things. Today, we're talking with so-and-so, yada, yada. And then they played the Randy Black theme music. It was like, Randy Black, he's the, and anytime I hear theme music, custom theme music, I'm like, oh, this could go either way. And they explained what the show was about. And I'm like, wait a minute, he just did that. So to me, I was kind of like, I don't think you need to explain what the show's about twice. I was like, if what you just said is in the jingle, one of those needs to go. Because you've only got, the first minute to really grab somebody's attention. And the rest of it was great. I was like, I love the fact that he explained who his guest was and why, without reading me his entire bio. Like, here's what matters, why he's here today. I always love that. It's always fun. So I'm so excited that Jim Collison is here today. He's from the Average Guy TV. We're going to do this and that. So let me tell you about Jim. And then all of a sudden you hear them go, Jim Collison started the Average Guy TV back in 2000. Gallup, and you can just see, oh, he's gone to reading the bio, and it's a whole change in energy. Yep. It's just, I'm like, oh, and it's kind of like, hey, I'm so excited. Here's Jim Collison. He was the guy. Okay.
Well, cadence is important, right? Yeah. Cadence is important in the way you're doing things. Dustin, I think, with your podcast, I don't know what you're thinking about format wise, but you have a great opportunity to kind of rip off what Dave and I do on this, where you do a show and you bring or even a roundtable format where you bring other dads in and have these conversations. That's not a guaranteed success, by the way. Roundtables don't just work. You don't just get 4 people together and it works every time. Ray does an amazing job. If you ever want a clinic on how to run a roundtable, Ray Ortega is the guy. I mean, I am super impressed always with the way Ray runs Podcasters Roundtable. So it's not a gimme. You can't just get people together and have them talk. You can't also just do an interview and have it be great. You gotta know what you're doing from an interview perspective. But Dustin, I would think a live call-in or a live show where you get an audience. I'm always interested in stuff like that. I think that's, I've got 30 years of parenting under my belt in that category, and you kind of think I think you could have a really good show there.
Yeah, Randy Cantrell from which Grow Great, I think is just his website. Am I trying to
leaning towards wisdom?
Leaning towards. I'm trying to figure out which one because he has a couple podcasts. You
wanted to do the accent and it threw you off. That's
it. Yeah. The Yellow Studio, Randy Cantrell. Record different intros and ask people in your target audience, in this case Christian dads, to give you feedback, and then rinse and repeat until you get the one you want. Yeah. To me, I think that's something I almost want to create a company of focus groups, just somehow have everybody say I am this, and then get a whole bunch of people. Then somebody says, hey, I'm doing a show on heavy metal knitting. Okay, good. I need all the heavy metal knitters to listen to this show and give us a feedback, because we need that. It's just a matter of when you're just starting out, you may not know where your audience is yet. So how do I even find them to go, would you listen to my podcast and give me feedback? And then I'm not sure when people first start out, it's weird. We all want to be good, but I'm not sure we want the feedback. Do you think that's true?
It's hard. I think you start getting that. I think the best possible scenario is the authentic you, because you can't maintain inauthenticness very long. It's going to start coming through, right? If you try to be somebody you're not, or if you try to have a personality you're not. I mean, imagine, Dave, if you tried to be Binky and the Wiz all the time. How hard it would be to maintain that persona. Vocally it would be difficult, but
I've done that.
It's hard, right? I mean, go ahead.
My Grumpy Old Man show, the worst podcast ever. And I'd be talking like this, and then like 30 seconds in, all of a sudden I'm back to sounding like Dave a little bit, and then it's gone.
Yeah, and then Dave just comes through, right?
Yeah.
So I think you need to have this authentic, because at the end of the day, people are attracted to you, to be honest. That's what makes your podcast popular, is when they're attracted to you and what you're saying and your authenticness. I watched two different shows. Carter Thomas is Coin Mastery, and it's on crypto stuff. And it's just him talking for 25 minutes about his take on the market. And it's daily. And then I listened to this other couple who are building a home in Idaho or somewhere in the Northwest. And it's just their story of them building this timber frame home. You would think, oh my God, how boring is that's like watching the paint dry. Well, they're sharing their experience, right? And they're super authentic. By the way, both of them have gotten massive amounts of negativity back on there. I mean, the one, the Pure Life for Living one that I watch actually has channels now popping up to make fun of it. So like it's
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you've made it big when you have other YouTubers making shows about your show.
Think of the effort it takes to go into.
No. It's incredible, but the home building one has 368,000 subscribers on YouTube. Dave, they're building a house, right? But they're being themselves, which is great, right? It's them. You can maintain that. Carter Thomas on Coin Mastery, just him. It's him. It's his style. By the way, he is daily and he does not miss. Like he puts out a video every single day. Consistency matters. He has 106,000 subscribers. I think be you. Like, don't create a show that's not you. Be you.
Yeah, that really is, because I think they're going to run into two things. Number one, it's hard to not be you. I know that sounds stupid, but you're just going to come out. And then the other thing, if you do pull it off, and now you go to meet your listeners, now you've got to be your character, and that I think would be even weirder.
I think the best compliment, and I've heard you say this, is when people say, "Wow, you're no different."
Yeah.
Like when they've met you in person,
yeah.
They go, "You're no different." And I've had that happen too. And I'm like, "No, this is me. It's too hard not to be me." So be you, and you will attract, if you are you and you are you consistently, you will attract a certain audience. Every time you read our Patreon list, Dave, I am stunned. Like I just go, wow. Thank you for, I just, you and I are authentically us every single weekend when we do this. There's no, there's nothing different. We are who we are here as we are anywhere. And I think that's important.
Well, speaking of that, what a great segue. When you did, I was like, oh, that was awesome. We want to give special thanks to Greg at Debt. Why can I not say Debt Shepherd? Because I see the BT and I want to call it Debit Shepherd. Debit Shepherd.
Debit Shepherd is a good name. It's strong.
Jonathan Bloom from weeklyawesome.com. Of course, the one and only Glenn the Geek Hebert from Horse Radio Network. Josh Rivers from podcastingexperiments.com. Max Truscott up there flying around in Aviation News Talk. And Shane, I guess it's Whaley, Whaley. Wally. Anyway, Shane is over there at spybrary.com. So thank you guys for being awesome supporters. If you would like to support the show, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. If you would like to come in and chat with us, you can go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/join. If you're listening live right now, we would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And Jim, I thought about this and I was like, you know what? He's got a point. There's no more phone call. I was like, you know what? It's a hassle to set up. We used it.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Just, either a chat room or askthepodcastcoach.com/join. And
I think it's better that way. And we don't. Here's the deal: in the 2 years or 4 years, or I don't know how long we've been doing this. 3 years, maybe. How long have we been doing this?
Now, do I have to go? I have to go look that up now.
Holy cow! You're having a good time when you stopped counting your episode numbers. We were at 180 or something a couple weeks.
We went over 200. This is, I think, Well, here I can tell you. I take this back. This is actually episode number 203. Because 202 hasn't been released. Talk about being consistent.
A little bit behind.
So today we will get last week's show, and then probably like Wednesday, because I try to give a couple. I don't want to like go, here's 5 episodes.
Stack them up.
Yeah. So this
Stack
is
'em up.
actually 203. And if I can scroll down, 2014.
Yeah. 4 years.
February 2014.
We have tried phone calls now for 4 years.
Yeah.
And like they just don't work. And it's just not in our audience just doesn't want to do it. And so I think that's one of those perfect times, like, let's just stop trying.
Yeah.
And we even askthepodcastcoach.com/join doesn't get very many to come in. I think we have really done a good job. This is going to sound maybe self-serving, but I think we've really done a good job of being that Saturday morning go-to. Listen, I'm going to do some things. I'm going to put these guys on, and every once in a while, there's going to be something important to listen to. But mostly, it's going to be fun. I've heard we are the Saturday morning cartoons, right,
yes.
for people. So that's great. We have found our niche, and we're out here almost every Saturday morning, and I really look forward to it. This is one of my most favorite podcasts to do, and I've got some great podcasts to do at work too. It's hard to have favorites at this case, but I myself look forward to just hanging out with you on Saturday mornings. And so I never come to say, I don't think I've ever done that where I'm like, I got a podcast with Dave. I just don't have that.
It's a fun way to start the day, at least for me. And then today I slept in because I was out late, so I'm scrambling at the last minute to get everything set up. This is from is it Covert? Yes, Covert Nerd says, when you interview someone, do you discuss with the person beforehand about what you will edit out post-production? Do you recommend letting the person interview you listen before you release? I don't do that, but that doesn't mean you can't. What are some interview best practices? This is something that I do that I don't think I see a lot of people don't, and that is the whole, for lack of a better phrase, the warm-up questions, like, blah blah blah. Tell me about yourself. Yeah. I will cut those out, and when we get to the meat and potatoes, so I always have like, hey Jim, welcome to the show, and Jim will say,
thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
And then I'll ask a chit chat, and then I'll ask another chit chat, and then maybe there's another chit chat. And then when I get to the meat and potatoes, I cut those 3 chit chats out because my audience doesn't care about the chit chat. I have an interview. I'm doing an episode, and I can't decide if it's going to be this week or next week, on merch. And this is a really cool thing. Well, I don't know if it's really cool. We'll find out in a couple of weeks. But I know James from TeePublic, and he's a t-shirt guy. And I've met him a couple of times at different conferences. And he was kind of like, hey, we should do something. And I'm like, okay. And his shirts seem well made and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do like a TeePublic commercial though. I go, can you get me in contact with people that are having success selling t-shirts? And he's like, oh yeah, I know a couple. I'm like, can we do that instead? I said, not that I don't want to talk to you. I said, but my audience is interested in strategies. Like, how do I do this? I know I should have merch, but like, what's working? And he goes, actually, I like that better than interviewing me anyway. And so he got me 3 different people. And I say this because one guy keeps talking about topics on his show. And I'm like, and I just let him go. But the whole time he's like, and the one time we talked about this, and then we talked about that. And I'm thinking, my audience doesn't care. Not to sound mean, but you're here to talk about t-shirts. And he's actually got, the interview went on a lot because he does a lot of stuff in Patreon. I said, dude, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to cut out the t-shirt stuff and put you in the t-shirt thing. I said, and I'll probably have your own interview, because he had a lot of really cool stuff for Patreon. But he on a couple of times just went into his topics that he's covered, and it was long. And I was like, that's not going to make it, because it really got to the point where it's like, okay, if he said 1 or 2, okay, literally 5 or 6. And I'm like, no, you've lost my audience at this point. So that's something I would edit. Jim, what do you do with interviews?
Well, we're all live. We're live to the hard drive. And so I only edit if they've asked, and they were there. So I don't ask them again. I don't give them 24 hours. I'm like, you were there. Is there anything? We just did this. Is there anything? And we don't even say it anymore. We just kind of, they'll come back to me if they want something edited out. Oftentimes they'll sense right away they said something they shouldn't have. And so I will send a note down to my editor at Gallup and say, hey, we need to take this part out. And I have a really good audio and video editor, so he takes care of that. But no, we actually do a pre-call with them about content. Well, first we do a tech pre-call separately than we do a content pre-call, because the tech can often be very, very frustrating for them, right? If you get someone who's not good with the tech, so we separate that tech call out, because we don't want to do the tech call 15 minutes before the show, because if it goes poorly, they're all pissed off, right?
Yeah.
And you just don't want a pissed off guest. So we do that tech call well in advance, 3-4 days, get them in the same place they're going to be in. I got a masterful tech guy at work who does all that for me, which is awesome. And so we do that tech call, then a content call. But Dave, I did when I was in Seattle, I did a content call from the lobby of one of the Microsoft buildings, and the gal wanted to do the whole interview on the phone. And I just kind of said, no, let's save it. She kept trying to talk like, well, then I want to talk about, I'm like, no, let's save it. I think if you give too much away in the pre-call, it'll make the interview feel awkward. And they'll end up saying all the time, well, when we were talking about, or last time I talked to you, you don't want any of that in there. You want it to be fresh and new. It's risky that way, but you want it to be fresh and new. So I cover some concepts. Kim says this. She kind of goes through her run through. I tell them, okay, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to start with an intro. Then I'm going to ask you some questions. Then I'm going to freewheel. Like I'm going to figure out, we're going to do some things that we haven't discussed. So be ready for that. And then I'm going to close it. Right. And we kind of walk through it. But it's a really good, that's for the Gallup one. Now on my tech side, those are podcasters or they're tech people, or now I have a lot of guests that have been on before. Man, is that super easy. Like, hey, come on the show. You've been on the show before. Like, you don't prep Glenn anymore, right? Or, Glenn just comes on and.
No, can I tell you what happens with Glenn? Because Glenn is so Glenn. Glenn comes on with his own bullet points. Because he'll contact me and say, hey, would you like to do a show about picking co-hosts? I just had to pick one, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. I'd love to talk about that. And he literally comes on. He's like, here's my 5 main things that I'm going to hit. And which is cool because then when I can hear him covering topic A and I can ask a question that'll get him right to topic B. And then, so I know like, here's the gold that I'm mining for. That's total Glenn. Cause when I went to Glenn's house, I mean, he has like a clock. It's like, we're going to talk about blah, 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 blah. And then at 9:15, we're moving to this topic. So you kind of know like, okay, how long can we talk about this? We should probably wrap up this topic because it's already 9:15. And then you go to the next, and it's not scripted at all, but it's like, here's the gold for this 15 minutes. Here's the gold for this 15 minutes. So, I always tell people, going back to what you said, when I got interviewed by David Hooper, we were mentioning him earlier. He does Red Podcast. He does Big Podcast daily. And, I was getting interviewed on his show about musicians. This is like literally 2006-ish. And I'm in this like green room of his. And he's like, so what can you tell me about, do you have anything basically on such and such? Oh yeah, we could do that. And he go, oh, wait, hold on. I just need to know yes or no. Okay, well, what about such and such? Oh yeah, you could do that. I just need to know if we can go there or not. And he did, just need to know, do you have something there or not? Yeah, okay, good. So it was in the same thing. He wanted to keep it for the show. He said, because what happens is like what you said, as we were talking about earlier, or he goes, it's just not as fresh the first time around because you're repeating it. And he goes, it's just not the same.
In the pre-show we talked about, I've heard that, because we do a pre-show for Home Gadget Geeks. And I've had guests say, well, we were talking about this in the pre-show. And I've even said that. So I think you have to be careful. Randy's talking about like a radio run sheet. And I think those are really important. I get a list for every show that I do. I have a list of things that I want to do. But before we're done, this is when I want to get out of it. I do find sometimes I follow it, but sometimes the guest will take it in a different direction. I recently had a guest that we had talked through, and we wanted to keep the format fairly tight for a reason. But when we got in the interview, the content did just not come out that way. And you could do the force it kind of thing where you're like, okay, wait a minute. I said we were going to talk about this. And so let's get back to that. You don't do that, right? The conversation was flowing. You craft it so that you can come back around to that point. And get it all in. But man, my rundown sheet and what we actually covered went a completely different direction than I thought. But we still got all the content in. So you can't freewheel it with nothing because you'll get nowhere. But you got to have something. But don't be afraid to dance around it, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. And in the chat room, I'll have to put links to this in the show notes. What did I say? This was episode 203. So if you go out to askthepodcastcoach.com/203, David Hooper had a PDF about, we're talking earlier about how to start off your show. Dave's also running Podfecta, which I will be speaking at in Nashville. That's April 20th. It's podfecta.com, I believe. And Dave gave me a coupon code. I'm not getting, this is not a kickback, but he's just like, hey, if you want to give your listeners a coupon, it's SOP. I think we'll save it. So it's fairly cheap. So if you want to check that out, but yeah, Dave is running a show now in Nashville, which should be fun. The other thing, somebody asked about, what about explicit language? Just let your audience know. I just had somebody did a really good job. They said most of my interviews are 20 minutes long. My audience is blah, blah, blah. And it's family friendly. So if you can not drop F-bombs, that would be great. And the 20-minute thing was great because that means I need the medium to short answer, because if it's an hour long, now I can go super deep. But if it's 20 minutes, if I answer a question in 3 minutes, that's 6 questions. So I got to shorten those up a little bit. So the clearer picture you can give your guest on why they're here. Number one, I'm bringing you on to talk about blah, blah, blah. And then let them know who your audience is so they can deliver the right content. And then what I do is kind of what Jim does. I just, at the end, I go, is there anything that you said today that you would not want published? And I know Kim said in the chat room, she does the same thing. Or no, she sends them the recording the day before and offers to edit. And she's never had somebody take them up on it. Cause it's like Jim said, they were there. And the only time I've ever had to contact somebody is I had somebody who was recording and didn't let me know they were recording. And so they asked me like, how was your day or something like that? And I'm like, there was this guy driving me crazy, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, and I'm like, when are we going to start recording? They're like, oh, we are recording. And I'm like, oh, hey, that whole thing I just said, that's not cool. It's like, I don't want to be complaining about my job in the public. I mean, that was,
well, sometimes you have external pressures where I interviewed someone, we'll leave the names out here, but I interviewed someone who later was accused of assault. And not the good kind. Not that there is a good kind of assault, but, so that I was contacted from a previous employer who said, hey, you've got this video from this person representing this brand, and now there's this. And it's like a takedown, right? And it wasn't an official cease and desist. It wasn't legal. It wasn't, it wasn't one of those kinds of threatening, like, you better take this down. But it was like, you guys might want to consider taking this down. And immediately we took it down, right?
That's the answer, by the way. I've had people go, hey, wait a minute. They signed a thing saying I could use this. And they came back and said, hey, can you take it down? And they get stuck on the point of, I have the legal right to put this up. And I'm like, unless it's getting millions of downloads and it's your number one download, just take it down. Just like,
even if it is, you should probably take it down.
Yeah, it's like, why?
Just do the right thing. Like, and if it's a situation where something was said and they could be re-interviewed and it could be fixed, we'll do that. But take the other one down. Like, don't fall on that sword. That's pretty stupid,
Yeah. And speaking of that, that's getting harder and harder to do now when you have the Google Play Musics and the Spotify's making a copy of your file.
Oh, that's true.
The whole thing of like, I'll just delete it off my media host. Well, guess what? There are other copies out there. And of course you can't erase it from people's hard drives, but just the fact that now we have these companies that are making copies, that's like, okay. And you kind of go, if I need to make a fake show or something, throw it in Spotify, delete an episode and see if it eventually catches up. Because it's Spotify's kind of it's cool because it's making a splash, but
it's just another place. I don't. It's not gonna. No one is gonna get famous on Spotify.
No,
it's just another place.
Another place to be found.
We've been talking a lot about it behind the scenes in the podcasting community, and it's caused a lot of drama because it's a mystery on how you get into it. And so it's been, but I don't know if anybody's numbers are going to be changed on Spotify. It's like Pandora. If all of a sudden Pandora started accepting podcasts,
which they are, by the way, have you heard that?
I hadn't heard it was official.
I don't know if it's official, but it's official that they're coming up with a strategy.
Yeah, Rob said on the Spreaker Live show he's been working with them a little bit too. By the way, great podcast you should listen to. By the way, but Rob said that he's been talking to him about it. But let's say they do. So what? Like, there's so many podcasters
Yeah.
that you've got to make that connection personally with your listeners. No service is going to make you famous. There'll be a avenue to make you famous. There'll be the platforms to help you be famous. Certainly YouTube will help you be famous. They'll screw you on the monetization on the back end, but they'll help you do that. But none of those make you good. You make you good, right?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because for me, most of these platforms, Stitcher, SoundCloud, when I was using it, I think some other ones, tune in. Most of these are like 1% to 3% of my audience. They're just another. And again, if you get 6 of those, there's 15% or 18%. So it's not something to completely sneeze away. But yeah, it's one the same way that I had somebody contact me this week, and it is getting to the point where the word launch to me is triggering a negative response. It makes me kind of twitch, and it's like, I'm launching and whatever. And I'm like, well, and I just emailed, what does that mean? I need to understand what that means. And they said, well, we're going to have 3 to launch. We're going to have 8 in the can. And I said, okay, just so you know, that's 11 episodes, if I understand that. And what happens on episode 4 when they go, I really hate this segment. You've got 7 more of them. So, but and I've completely lost my train of thought now. That was fun.
It's a good strategy. I mean, getting ready to launch or getting ready to release your podcast, those kinds of things. I'm actually, I think we talk about having 8 or 10, doing 8 or 10 podcasts. It's just most of them should never actually make it to be live. They should just never be there. So this is a good launch plan. Get 12 podcasts, throw them all away, then start podcasting, because they're awful.
That's true.
I go back and listen to my first 10 and I'm like, I want to stab
Oh my
myself,
goodness.
right? These are awful.
I think he's been in the chat room before. Darwin Dave, actually he's in the chat room right now. Does Dealing with My Grief. And I'm going to be on his show. And he goes, but we're not. And here again, great example. He contacts me to be a guest. He goes, but I don't want to talk about podcasting. So right up front, we're not talking podcasting. We're talking grief. And I'm like, cool, I can do that. And I went over and found an episode of Building a Better Day. And I was amazed. It's from 2014. And literally, I'm listening now through podcaster ears, and there's literally like just this ever so slight buzz in the background.
Yeah.
And that's back when I had a ground loop. So every now and then there's this high pitch that pops in and out. And I was like, this audio is horrible. But it's, hey, where it was at the time. And it's one of those where that's the fun part. If you have a buzz and it's on your computer, you can't tell later if you listen back to it, if it's the computer or the recording. You have to listen to it someplace else. And so in this case, I'm now no longer on that computer. And I heard the buzz and the high-pitched whine screaming at me, of course, which most people won't know unless you're sitting in a quiet room doing this, holding the headphones into your head. But
I did a consulting call this week for somebody I've worked with before who's changed jobs, now wants to do a new podcast. And so, and she was kind of like, well, this kind of should be easy because we've done all this before. And I was like, well, yes, learning all the things that you learned on the other show were awesome, but you will have a different cadence, a different formula, different hosts. You will be the consistency in it, but all that has to gel. And so, it's one of those things, man, get that group together, practice a bunch, do them live, don't make them podcasts. In fact, make them your demo reel. So create 30 hours worth of content. Not 30 is probably too much, but maybe 10 hours worth of content. That's all live. Do them on YouTube, do them like we're doing here. But they don't go anywhere. These are kind of the pre-launch shows. Then pull segments out of those that you like. By the time you've done 10, you probably have a good feel for what you're doing. Then start podcasting. Like you'll be so much happier with yourself if you do it that way. That is really difficult because most people just want to record and get that first. They're so jonesing for that first podcast.
Yeah.
So that's my advice.
Doesn't hurt. I mean, there's a reason why musicians practice in the basement first before they get on the stage.
A lot.
A lot.
I think sometimes we podcasters we should be charged with malpractice on podcasting because we are like we're trying to do surgery and we haven't even started med school yet. Like, it's kind of like, come on, guys, we need to learn some things before we go out and do that work.
Elsie was just talking about this on She Podcast, where people are asking about there's a thing at Libsyn, it's called My Libsyn, where you basically create a Netflix for your podcast. You can spend X amount of month or X amount of year and you get access to the back catalog. Everything happens automatically. And she said, people are asking about that. And they're like, great, how many downloads do you get? Like, what's your show? And they go, oh, we haven't launched yet. And she's like, on one hand, it's cool to know like what the options are. She goes, but it was just, again, they're doing surgery and they haven't
no, right on. You're well, and yeah, no, and you want to, we talked in the first part of the show about planning and thinking if you're going to be successful, what do you need to know, and planning with the end in mind, and all those other things we talked about. But that's true, Dave. I mean, in this case, well, the media matters, the method matters in what you're doing here, and your success is not going to be, you're not going to win or lose the battle based on, it's going to be based on talent. And so you got to get out there and try it. You may start doing things and find out nobody wants to listen. You might start doing things and find out everybody wants to listen. So you eventually got to get that stuff out there. I just think sometimes as podcasters, we don't spend enough time practicing. I went back, Dave, this week. Somebody asked me, how many podcasts do you think you've done?
Oh,
and that's a great question for you, because I know you've probably done more than me. But when we think about all the shows that I've done, all the tech shows that I've done, on my own network, plus what we've done at Gallup, I mean, I'm thinking it's got to be 1,200, 1,500 podcasts. And I still feel like I have a lot to learn in the space with the voice, And so, gosh, put some time in, right? Practice.
This was last checked in January. He said, waiting for the Excel file to open up. I've done 3,000, again, in January, 3,037 episodes. 3,182,000 downloads, averaging 459 downloads an episode. But some of these, and this is where I laughed. I have 33 different shows.
Yeah.
And I'm only doing like 4 or 5 now because, the customer service show, and rest in peace, Bernie the Cat. Although I do have Bernie the Cat in the can. I need to release those.
No, you don't.
I do.
No, you don't.
I do.
Don't do it.
I need to release, like, it'll be like Tupac, man.
Let it be a legend.
No, there's one that's actually really, I knew his days were numbered, so I did one last where Bernie got all philosophical on us. But anyway, wow, look at the time.
Let it be the lost files they find.
The lost files.
The lost files. 20 years from now,
what's sad is, and they're doing that. They keep releasing new Jimi Hendrix stuff, and I'm like, really? Didn't need that one. Didn't need Jimmy doing, old blues stuff, out of tune guitars, poorly mixed. I'm like, I could have lived with that.
On the can playing, you're like, no, I didn't need to hear that.
Yeah. But anyway, Jim, what's going on? This is officially, I would normally be playing the music here. We're going to the wrap up.
Insert music here. Yeah, over at theaverageguy.tv/live. So we're Mike and I are back to news, feature, and review stuff. So a bunch of time kind of catching up. Stephen Hawking passed away this last weekend. Big deal in the tech community because he was, he's a legend for all the things that he did. So we spend a little bit of time talking about that and then covering some tech news. And
in the post show, I have one more note about the Creative Christian Dad. I'm going to go into that in a second. On the School of Podcasting, I have a couple things coming up. I have a bunch of toys that I need to play with that I haven't played with yet. So I'll either be talking about those. I'll either be talking about ego and podcasting, or I'll be talking about t-shirts. The good news is I have too much content. It's a matter of figuring out which one I want to do. Maybe you guys in the chat room can tell me which one to do. But we're here every Saturday. AskThePodcastCoach.com/live. If you'd like to be an awesome supporter, go over to AskThePodcastCoach.com/awesome. Jim, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, good to be back.
And we'll see you again real soon with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. Okay. So that's the which will be weird because in YouTube I'm looking for where the music stops, and now there's no music. So that it's gonna be harder to find the cutoff point.
Yeah, it will be.
But
You know what I've done? I've in at work we do a Spanish language podcast now, and of course I don't speak Spanish, and neither does my editor. So we've had to find some creative ways
fun.
to mark the videos more than just the audio, because he goes through it in super fast speed. And so I've created just a Gallup banner that I put up, so when it can be cut, I have the Gallup banner up on the screen. So it's just a static image. And when we come back to the editable stuff, then we go back to faces. So there is a visual cue there for my editor, so he knows, because and we're doing 2 shows at a time. So we're recording, show number 1, and then we're taking a 5-minute break, and then we're recording show number 2. But it's all on the same reel. So I don't want him wasting time listening to the middle part to find where the next show starts. So we created this visual cue. So that's another trick you can deploy there. If you're using video and you got an editor and you want to know when you start and stop, you can change the screen to a standard image, whatever, to a picture, and that will tell you when you're starting and stopping.
We have a great question. Darwin's going to do these silicone wristbands. My question is, does anybody wear these anymore? Because personally,
I don't think so.
I don't. I'm going to say every time I get one, I'm like, oh, it's one of those, and I throw it on the desk or wherever.
Maybe some are. I don't.
I wear them at a conference. Like if I'm at a conference and somebody gives me one, I'll put it on and wear it around the conference. But the minute I get home, I'm like, it's odd because I'm trying to figure out why. And I know the original one was what? Not Neil Armstrong, Lance. Was it
Lance Armstrong? Yeah, Lance Armstrong.
And the first one, it was yellow, and everybody knew that was the whole Lance thing. Then everybody and I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't want to poo-poo on your idea. I'm just letting you know that if you gave me one, I probably wouldn't wear it.
We had a coach at Gallup create the 5. So your top 5 strengths. So you could buy one for each, and then wear them, and you could wear them at 1 or 2 at a time or whatever. And I haven't seen that take off in the community. As far as a lot of people like coffee mugs. Lots of people we sell a ton of, not these are Starbucks, but coffee mugs seem to work. You know what's been getting real popular? Socks. Branded
but they don't.
Socks. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but who sees them though? That's the whole thing.
That's the thing. Because funky socks or crazy socks or whatever they call them, wacky socks.
I guess in the summer, if you could see, because to me, I'm picturing my jeans are over my socks. You can't.
I know, but it's catching on. I've gotten several apparel. I was just at this Microsoft MVP summit last week, and I got 2 pair of Windows Insider socks.
Nice.
Yeah. They might even be, I wonder if they're.
And true, if somebody's going to give you money for it, hey, enjoy my socks.
I thought maybe I had them down here.
That's wild.
But the other thing, the other thing is stickers, right? I mean, I've got these stickers from there, and I put them on stuff. And so the back of my, the back of my Surface, I end up putting stickers on the back of my Surface, right?
That's me. I got them on my iPad.
So I think stickers are really good. I mean, I think if you're a podcast and you're not doing stickers, that's a must. I did a set of stickers and then I haven't come back to them. I need to do them again. They're cheap. Give them away. So it's one of those things that it's an easy way to get in, and I think they're pretty inexpensive.
See, I was saying I'm not sure I would wear a whatever those things are called, a silicone band. Roy's like, hey, that's a great idea. So
yeah. And
Kim got socks from AWeber. So there.
Yeah. Oh, I've gotten 2 pair of StrengthsFinder socks that from vendors that are making them for us, not for us, but they're making them and selling them. And I thought too, but socks have gotten to be that fashion, that wacky, because you can't see them all the time. People wear crazy socks, and then I don't know. I've seen more socks recently.
And Randy asked, did I wear a podcasting shirt last night? Of course I did. It was a choice. I was either going to wear a guitar shirt or, so I wore the one from, it's dark gray. I forget where it was from, Mapcom. I think it just says podcaster. That was one thing that was interesting, talking about community, on how your community will just interact with each other. So the concert gets done last night, and now you have this giant mob going to the one parking lot, and we're all just talking to each other. Like, hey, man, it was a great show, blah, blah, blah. And I go, and I just happen to look at the one guy, and I say, do you guys know that Graham Bonnet is, I said, I Googled it in the middle of the concert. That dude is 70 years old. I go, and he's singing his butt off. And he goes, yeah, he goes, what would have happened if he hadn't whipped his junk out on stage? And I go, what? And he goes, yeah, that's how he got fired back in the day. He was drunk and got a little
loosey-goosey.
Little loosey-goosey on the stage, and they fired him. I'm like, so, yeah, I went to a concert last night. Nobody's ever heard of this guy. His name's Michael Schenker, unless you're a guitar player. He was in a band called UFO. And when I was 13, my brother bought a album called, it's so good I can't remember the name of it. Something in the Night. Oh, it's going to drive me nuts. But it's like one of the best, like considered to be one of the best live CDs like ever. That's going to drive me nuts.
Randy thinks 70 is too old to wear leather pants.
Yeah, I did not do leather pants. No,
not you. The guys on the stage.
Oh, he was not. He was wearing jeans, and he always kind of comes out. It's weird. He had a long sleeve white shirt on and a tie, and then jeans. And I was kind of like, okay. And then I've always heard that he's very, very, he sings like literally from his toes. Like I'm pretty sure he did not need a microphone, because his mouth was like, I could see his tonsils, and he just belts it out. And I'm trying to find the name of that album now. It's going to drive me nuts. And apparently UFO has 27 million live CDs. This is one of those bands that just keep releasing the same 13 songs over and over and over. Okay,
hey, if it's working.
Hey, there we go. Strangers in the Night. Remastered in 2008. And this guy is just a phenomenal guitar player. And here's the cool thing about it. He has his own tone, and it's almost, I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but we've all heard about the wow, chicka, wah, wah, right in a wah wah pedal. All that does is when you put a wah wah pedal all the way to the back, it's like, it's all bass. And then when you put it down, it's all treble. And in the process, if you have like a really strong, knob on your tone knob on something, just do this and you'll hear a wah wah. And he happened to, for whatever reason, have his halfway through. So his guitar is very nasally sounding. And that's his sound. And I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but you hear his tone, and then you hear him play. And he's from Germany, and he's kind of got this weird classic. I told somebody, it's like heavy metal Bach. It's like, it's very, it was really cool. And the guy's 63, and that's the other lesson I learned, is he makes it look really easy. I came home and actually played a hole in my finger. You can see that's where a callus used to be. Yeah, he's 63. No, and here's the thing. If you're an old rock star and you're not making much money, all you have to do is wear ripped up jeans, and nobody knows if you're poor or not. Because that was the thing. Everybody was wearing like ripped up jeans. Like it looked like they were wearing two pairs of jeans, like a pair of jeans and then a ripped one over the other one. So it was like this weird two-tone blue-black thing going on. But I actually at one point owned a pair of leather pants. They're not fun. They don't breathe well. And if you've ever seen the episode of Friends with Ross and his leather pants, that's straight up true. They're not easy to get off. And yeah, so, and they're hard to pull off. I found really
so many inappropriate things that we could be talking about there. So many. Oh my
but
God.
Anyway,
no podcasters and leather pants.
But I will probably, I'll probably, because it's easier, that'll probably be this week's School of Podcasting, because there was a lot of lessons at that concert, and mainly because the one on t-shirts, I have to learn how to put up a TeePublic website. That's going to take time, and I have to go back and listen to 3 interviews now and pick out the gold, and that literally would probably take me all weekend. And I think I have some consulting going on this weekend and things like that. Nice. Randy says he once saw David Allen Cole and thought, man, glistening black jeans, only to find out that they were blue jeans with a lot of grease on them. Excellent.
Yikes.
The fun part of this band is there were 4 singers, and the last guy literally came out and he looked like Jack Black with a beard and a wig. And because you know how like Jack Black will like make fun of singers and he'll do all this gestures and this guy was doing it and he wasn't making fun of it. And I was like, and plus he had like the ultimate dad bod, and the other guys were actually in pretty good shape. But this guy was not, and he was the youngest guy on stage and he had the ultimate dad bod. And when you're like posed, it just didn't work.
No.
And then the other thing was his name was Doogie. His first name is Doogie. And I'm like, unless your last name is Hauser, I'm thinking get a new nickname, because just heavy metal singer Doogie. I'm like, nah, that's
not so much. It's probably because he's branded, because we think of Doogie Howser when we think.
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm not going to ask you to recreate this, but if you haven't seen Dave's intro or the kind of the teaser for Ask the Podcast Coach this morning, so the video he makes before we do Ask the Podcast Coach, go out and search it, because Dave does the 3 or 4 styles of singers that are available. It's really good. You need to go out, and I laughed out loud a lot. It was kind of what got me started this morning. I sat down, Dave's live. I go over there, watch him, and Dave is explaining the 3 or 4 different styles of singer. Dave, you do a Mick Jagger better than anybody.
Well, Mick, number one, Mick has the finger. Like, watch the finger. I don't know what he's looking at, right? And then you have to do the clap, and then the chicken.
Yeah.
This is just like, so it's always, and then you get the lip going. So, and then you knock off your headphones.
Oh my God.
What I forgot was the Bono "Somebody Said My Name" move, which is where Bono's always got the weird thing where he's singing down at the microphone, right? But all of a sudden he'll be singing, and then all of a sudden he acts like somebody in the balcony called his name. So he'll be singing to the crowd, and all of a sudden he'll just go for no apparent reason. Like, what is that?
Oh,
I wish my name was Bono.
You wish you had Bono's money.
Yeah.
No, you don't want Bono's problems. As podcasters, I found my editor he's been watching me now for, I don't know, he's probably edited 400 or 500 videos of mine, and he goes, I can tell now when you're about to do something or almost even say something, or the way you're going to say it or how you're going to respond. I mean, he is, if you think about any listeners, any fans, like there's no bigger fan when we think about knowing what you do or your tells as your editor. Because and Emily just jumped in the chat room. She probably knows this as she started doing editing. You start to really hear you really start to hear those editing, or you do certain things.
Emily says, I still get uncomfortable thinking about Bowie and Mick Jagger dancing together. Yes, that ranks up there.
That's dancing in the dark.
Really bad videos. I'm sorry, Jim. I just derailed you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Keep going.
David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Dancing in the Street. Another one, my favorite, because they're singing angrily to a mannequin, is Chain Reaction by Journey. They're literally going, I bet you. And I'm like, and they're like right in the face of this mannequin. And I'm like, I'm just picturing like the director going, okay, guys gather around. Here's the storyboard. Okay, Steve, you're on the left side of the mannequin, and Neil, you're on the right side. And you're both singing angrily to the mannequin, and just like, and somebody's, oh yeah, this will be great. This will be a great video.
It's going to be great. A lot of those Journey videos out of the 80s were super interesting.
80s videos in general were just like let's have a white horse running through a Walmart that, just all these things like, wait, what did we just see? And then then all the stereotypes of, and then we'll have a mirror just break for no reason. And then,
well, we started literal, right? MTV started with literal videos, not the literal ones we have today, but the literal videos where for most bands, it was either live or it was a literal interpretation of what the song was supposed to be. Then everybody started getting super creative with them. And then everybody went super abstract with them. And then it was a competition to see who could have the weirdest video out, right? And then it kind of came back around, and then MTV disappeared. And it was over. I mean, it was just, I remember the day when it was like, oh, we're not playing videos on MTV anymore?
Yeah. It's like what's the M stand for?
When did that
maybe
go
not
away?
Yeah.
And so it's funny, like, music videos don't work today. And like, why is that? When we were growing up, the music video was a huge part of the genre. I think as podcasters, we should kind of think about this. Like, why did they disappear? Like, why they just became irrelevant? It's not like they couldn't, it's like people couldn't stop making them. It's like, it wasn't like we had there was anti music video movements going on around the world.
That's a good question.
But why did they stopped being relevant? Now, some of them are still being made, but think about it, Dave. In the late 80s, if you were a band and you had a new song, you had to have a music
You
video
had to.
too.
I remember when Metallica finally broke down and made a video, because it was like they were at first, they're like, we're not making one. That was kind of like, you probably should make one. And then now it's weird. Stryper just came out with, or is coming out with, a new album. Judas Priest. Here's something sad, and then we will go back to videos because it's a good topic. Talking about old rock stars. Glenn Tipton is the guitar player of Judas Priest, is not touring this year because he has Parkinson's. And I was like, oh, this sucks when your rock stars are getting old. But they have a new video. Stryper has a new video. And what the thing I'm seeing now on YouTube, because that's the reason they make them. They throw them on YouTube and hope that people share them. But I'm seeing more of this. It's the official lyric video.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And it's literally the song. And it's like, it's on their channel. And
Just
it's like,
lyrics. Yeah.
just lyrics. And I'm like, the official lyric video. And I'm like, because I want to see, which is great if you're an old aging rock star. You just make a lyric video. Nobody can tell that, you're old. But
well, I think the chat room is right. I think it's moving. It's on YouTube. Certainly bands are making, Taylor Swift is making music videos for all the songs that are popular. But maybe it's just decentralized in the sense that we don't have a channel anymore. It's all being distributed out through YouTube. But it doesn't, the music videos don't seem to hold the value. They were the pinnacle. You made it big, then you made a music video. And maybe music videos are just a part of the genre now, where it's like, no, it's just expected. You're going to create a few videos and call them, that's what you're going to do. It seemed like in the 80s and early 90s, that was the pinnacle of the music experience, was your music video.
Well, my favorite was just you'd go into a record store and they'd have like a whole MTV section, and I know there used to be a niche radio station in where I live, and it was called Z-Rock, and it was like heavy metal. It wasn't Bon Jovi. It was Manowar. It was Slayer. It was like, and it was, you'd turn on, you're like, holy cow. And it got so popular that they had a section in music stores, like, here's your heavy metal thing. And again, all of a sudden one day it just went away. It was like, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's, I don't know. I know there's no like local, like, hey, it's Friday night videos with, Jim from the local, Channel 8 thing.
No. It seems to have just lost it's there. Maybe it just blended in with the, Randy is saying the digital music distribution has changed, right? The whole business model is different now. And so artists are, the money is in the merch, not in the,
$35 t-shirt. I didn't buy one. I'm like, not for $35. I'm not.
Or arenas being filled at $97 tickets.
Yeah.
Like who was coming to town? Bieber was coming to town, I think. And folks, I don't know why, but they were trying to get Justin Bieber tickets. And the cheap ones were like $95. And you're like, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I mean,
another great guitar player, his name's Joe Bonamassa. That I like, but every time he comes to town, is like his cheapest tickets are $80.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
and they're getting it. They're getting it. That's the thing. They're getting it.
Yeah, And the thing, and that's the reason why I went last night, is $20. I'm like, wait, tickets are $20. I'm like, I cannot pass that up. So that was amazing. So, but yeah, the money is live. Well, and they've, as much as I go, I'm not buying a $35 t-shirt. These guys have to eat. And I'm not paying for their music anymore. I'll listen to it on Spotify, and you can enjoy the 0.0002 cents I made you today by listening to 4 songs. But they've got to eat, and what's the other thing that's weird is that's kind of hurting ticket sales. I would think is I literally could watch that whole concert on YouTube from somebody, just sitting there in the front row. It doesn't, now obviously it doesn't sound as good. That's the other thing I thought was amazing but that has to, I would think if I can watch your concert on YouTube and all I want to do is see you and see what you sound like, I'm amazed at the audio because in theory, I don't know what the decibel level was, but this should be nothing but distorted nonsense.
Right.
And I took some video last night and I was amazed. I'm like, I'm listening to it on the way home and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't that horrible.
Well, it's an iPhone.
It's an iPhone. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's post-processing that goes on now. The chips are so powerful. There's some post-processing that goes on through the microphone as it's being recorded, which is super helpful. They do that so that because they know a lot of people are recording these things or using on conference calls or whatever. And so the microphone has to be adaptive. And so there is some post-processing that's going on, pre-processing, I guess you could say, on those phones. So some of that it'll adapt for it as you're listening to it. I'm amazed at what I get out of these phones when I have people, when I'm just doing live calls with them and they're just holding that thing up in front of their face or whatever, or the recordings that they're doing, it's nuts what you can do on those things. It's great.
I hate when you're on your iPhone and all of a sudden it's decided to rearrange your photos in a way that you're like, I just wanted to see the latest one. And
that
it's
part
like,
is messy.
Yeah. Cause
Joe Taylor says used to be that concerts were the loss leaders to support the album. Now it's the other way around. Yeah, it is. I make it, Dave, as we think about, in podcasting, as we think about I don't think a lot of podcasters think about having a loss leader. Like what is super important, right? What is that thing that you're putting out there that's hooking your customer, and you're not charging a lot for it, but it's bringing them in. And what's that piece? I think we've got to think along those lines of that standard kind of marketing. In what are you getting out there? What are you giving away?
Can you hear me now still?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this. We'll see. Can you hear? Actually, you know what? Now that I listen to it through headphones, that's horrible. It sounded much better in the car. I mean, I expected this.
Well, you're going off speakers into a microphone, That just may be bad singing.
Well, that's the interesting part. That guy just hit that high note, and if I were to let this play in a minute, he goes for it and does not hit it at all.
Second time.
Let me see if you know what that's another course. Never mind. That sounded so much better in my car. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
you've got that directly plugged in.
Yeah. That's if it was through the thing.
It wasn't too bad for live.
Well, it's live. That's the thing. The bass is always just a muddy mess.
Yeah. You can't get that.
I got to get to the fun part where he just can you see him at all?
Yeah.
The guy just he sings.
Love the guitar player.
Yeah, that's the guy with
the dad bod.
Yeah. No, that's another guy. I'll show you a picture of him. Here we go. Here he's gonna blow it. Yeah, that was not good. And the dad bod guy, he came out with tell me that doesn't look like a Jack Black character.
Oh yeah.
I was like, and it's blurry, and because I had to zoom in 800 times, but I was like, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, it looks like you're pretty close.
I was gonna go on the floor, and because I'm not super tall, but I'm not short, and I just thought, you know what, I'm losing about 10 feet here, but I'm on a platform and I'm now looking them in the eye, and I'm like, I'm just gonna stand here next to my drunk friend. So literally he was just like, and he kept trying to talk to me, and I'm like, I don't know if you realize this or not, I'm watching a concert right now. If you could not bug me with your don't bogart if the joint comes, don't bogart. I'm like, I'm not gonna bogart the joint.
What does that even mean?
That means you don't pass it.
You keep it?
Yeah. And then he even looked at me, and it's not, I could care less if you do. I've never gotten high. I just never have. And he's like, well, you're old, you probably smoke. And I'm like, no, actually I don't. And he's like, what? And like, no, you gotta smoke the doob. And geez. Dude, it's not 77 anymore.
Free bird.
Yeah. No free bird.
Any mosh pit going on? Randy
no mosh pit. I've never, where was I at that there was a mosh pit?
Yeah, you got to go to a young kids concert for that. That's not happening
Yeah,
with a bunch of old guys.
my niece used to take me to Cookie Monster Rock, is what I would call it. And it was always weird because there'd have one guy who was literally like, and there'd be people, and then they'd have, I remember the one, like the guy's literally like, and then they had a drummer, he'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, why don't you just let that guy sing everything? You know, cookie, cookie. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm looking at her and she's just all in. But they had a little mosh pit thingy going on. I'm like, that's why we're sitting up here in the balcony.
That's awesome. Cookie Monster Rock.
Oh, I couldn't take it. And it was all like, she really wanted to go, you know, taking your kids. So me and my brother be sitting there going, we're just feeling old, you know. I remember my dad coming in and telling me, you can't whistle Ted Nugent. I'm like, what? He's like, how are you supposed to whistle this? That was my dad's, like, if you could whistle it, it was a good song. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you can't really whistle Cat Scratch Fever. You could try. It'd be a little different.
Really whistle it. You know, I keep trying to bring this thing back to podcasting, and
yes, I'm sorry.
You're not having it today. You are not.
I'm stuck in the concert still. I'm sorry, buddy.
No, you're fine. Just so folks know, when they're listening to the post show and they're like,
yeah, this was
30 minutes of nothing to do with podcasting. I just want to say I've tried a couple times to bring it back, and Dave will not come back with me.
Well, it dawned on me that I did the whole Mick Jagger thing. And I'm like, oh, now I have to upload the video.
I did, yes, I did tease that. So that's my fault that I brought up the Mick Jagger thing.
Oh, and I forgot to say, for the back to podcasting, the guy that was going to do the creative Christian dad thing.
Yeah.
Here is what I've noticed about, and I feel like Jerry Seinfeld. Like, I can tell a Jew joke because I'm a Jew guy. I can bash Christians because I go to church. Please do not ask for money in the first 2 minutes of your show. Oh, that drives me bonkers. Like, every show, it's like, welcome to, you know, the Oakwood, trying to think of Oakwood River, you know, Baptist Church, blah, blah, blah. And like, literally, before we get to Pastor Bob, you know, buy the Oakwood Baptist River Church handkerchief. Yours for only $17.90. I'm like, oh, really? Like, not even going to give me any kind of value. And just, I would not do that. And then I had, I listened to another show this week. And again, feel free to talk. And we talked about being authentic. This was this woman being very authentic, but everything was like praise be to God. Like, isn't it great how God made this pen and the ink so that I can write on this? It's amazing. And, you know, God made the paper and I'm like, everything. I was like, okay, I got it, you know, praise, but it's like, everything was the Lord. And I'm like, you're going to probably run some people the wrong way when
but maybe you'll attract those who like it.
Yeah. I'm going to say, and that's, again, that's her being authentic.
Be authentic.
And there's going to be somebody on that other end that's like, you preach on, sister. That's right. And because I have a cousin that is that way, and that's fine. And that's her being.
I watch this guy on YouTube who does bees, you know, down in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And everything is a miracle. And, you know, when he captures the queen, it's praise Jesus for, you know, thank you. Yeah. And again, it's his shtick. It's who he is. I applaud him for being authentic. At first it was a little weird, but I'm like, he creates great content. I love watching the guy. So be yourself, right? In that, it may limit things. It may not. I mean, it may be the right thing to do and attract people to what you're doing, but you got to go with it. You know, you got to go with it.
That's the key, and that really is the key. By being authentic, you draw people like you to your show, and the people that aren't like you, that don't like that, aren't going to listen. That's the beautiful thing of it. I don't think there's much spam in podcasting because it's way too easy to not listen. And the other thing is, have I told you of the story at MapCon where I asked about how do white people not look like idiots in front of black people?
No.
All right. I'm at MapCon and this woman's doing and again, right now I can even say, is it African-American? Is it black? I'm not sure which one is the right one. So for now, I'm going to say black. And she's talking about black issues and people of color. And I said, I'm nervous even asking this question. I said, which means it's probably a really good question. And I said, I am not a racist. I grew up in a white neighborhood because that's where my parents lived. And I said, I had one African-American student in my school. She sat next to me, which makes me sound like a racist because I'm saying I know a black person and I understand that.
Yeah.
I said, but I said, on the other hand, it's not that I'm a racist. I said, but if you say anything wrong these days, you're pinned as a racist. I said, so what are white people saying besides, hey, I know a black person, so I'm not racist? I said, what else are they saying that maybe we're not aware of? And so she kind of tried to answer my question. And I had this other black woman come up to me afterwards and said, honey, I really liked your question. And I go, well, thank you. And she goes, and here's why. And I go, why? And she goes, because you were talking from your heart. And she goes, and people, she goes, don't worry about it. She goes, because for the record, she goes, we can't even figure that out. She goes, so you just keep asking your questions and saying what you're saying. And she goes, and people can tell your heart. And I think that's really what you were talking about is when you're authentic, it just comes across and it's not annoying. It's just somebody being themselves. And that's so.
And if you're on YouTube any length of time, you'll find out your authenticness will get blasted. So you just got to survive through it. And if you try to podcast in a world or be on YouTube in a world where people aren't going to disagree, just quit, because it's brutal out there. I mean, it is brutal. So be authentic, find those that like you, focus on them. Don't sweat the other ones. In fact, shut them out. I don't let anyone I don't let anyone post on my sites unless I've approved it. That's just silly to leave open comments allowed, especially on Facebook. That's just silly, guys. It's silly. Don't do it. It's not worth it. You should be the ones to see it. If they're good, approve them. If they are bad and you still want that kind of conversation, let it through, right? Let it through. But there are people who don't deserve the time of day on YouTube that you just need to block or you just need to delete. They're not good humans and do that. Do not fall into that trap.
I've heard more of that on YouTube than I have on a website.
YouTube is awful.
YouTube is just
the worst. It's just it's all the bad things about humanity. It is literally the cesspool of humanity in the comments. It's just not right, and it's gotten out of control, and it's stupid. And so you shouldn't, as a podcaster, you should control the content on your site. That's not a restriction of free speech. That is what you should do. So there you go.
It goes back. It's your brand.
Yeah. It's just, we need curated spaces. Humans cannot be trusted. That we just can't. And I don't know what's wrong with us in that. And I think it's always been that way, but we just cannot be trusted. We need curation. And so don't allow that stuff in your space. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. So, all right, we're running over.
Okay. Sounds good. You got any big plans for the day?
I have to figure out what I'm doing for Monday show. Whatever it is, it's going to take a lot of time. Plus I have School of Podcasting office hours today, I believe, and some other things on my calendar. So I need to double check. I know I've got stuff tomorrow, so it's just a matter of figuring out what it is and where am I going to squeeze in my podcast. So.
I gotta produce mine too and get a workout in. So I got to figure out what's the thing
I got to do.
I know I got to get down to the fitness center. So, all right, man. Have a good weekend. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Don't drink too much if you're doing that.
No, I don't have any in the fridge. We'll see you.